They are defining Antifa as anybody who opposes Trump, you in the general public. And they know, and we know, and everyone knows, Antifa is not an organization. There's nobody who's filed papers. There is no board. There is no nonprofit status. There is no CEO. There is no president. There is no chancellor. There is no Antifa organization. And that is to their benefit. Because if there's no Antifa organization, they can basically say, well, anybody who opposes us, whether that is nonprofit funding, whether that is activists opposing ICE, whether that is people who don't want the National Guard in their city, they are Antifa. And therefore they are terrorists. And therefore their rights, their due process, their constitutional protections can be overrun. I just want that to be clear on this show, and I want to say it as long as we need to say it.
I mean, I think the point you're making is that it is intentionally vacuous.
Yes.
And so, to introduce a theoretical term at the risk of showing everybody what a wonk I am, it's what we could call a floating or empty signifier. It's a word that doesn't have any kind of fixed meaning, and so that's the point of it, is to have no fixed meaning. It doesn't say this is what it is. There's no dictionary definition. If you look it up, it's just going to say anti-fascist. That's it's short for anti-fascist. But what does that mean? That means whatever we want to fill it in as. And it's the same thing as woke, right? The word woke. What does woke mean? It means whatever opponents of wokeness want it to mean. And so when we say it's an empty or floating signifier, you can fill it in with whatever meaning you want. And that's the key. And I think that that's the important thing to recognize is, as they would say, right? That's not a bug. It's a feature. The lack of definition is why they can just point to an amorphous they. It's like when a lot of people say, and you're like, who says? Like nobody says. A lot of people just becomes this kind of grab bag for whatever you want to be in it. It's the same thing. And I think that that's the real key to recognize here is that this is what they're doing. And so as you say, who is it going to be? How are we going to fill that term in? We're going to fill it in with everybody we don't like, which is everybody who opposes Trump.
And I think taking your concept, there have been empty signifiers that have been used in the very near past and are still in use. I would throw out socialism and communism. Socialism and communism have very specific definitions. There's histories there. Yeah. There's ways that you can identify what is communism, what is not. It doesn't matter. The way that those terms have been used is just, well, anybody who's a Democrat, anybody who's opposed to Trump. Now, Antifa is really, to me, it's really come into focus since Charlie Kirk. Posobiec's comment there really highlights that. One example of Antifa and the way they're using it is the Rutgers professor Mark Bray, who has had to leave the country because he wrote a book called Antifa, and he basically is outlining like how Antifa is this like loose kind of like idea of those who oppose fascism, as you just said. Mm-hmm. But TPUSA and others identified him as the Antifa prof. He's been doxxed, he's been threatened, so he and his family left for Europe because they felt like they were unsafe in this country. Now, this leads us to another clip, Dan, that I think some folks might already be familiar with, but Stephen Miller was on CNN, and he's being asked about, Trump, the judges who are not allowing Trump to call up troops and send troops from California or other states to Portland, talking about judges stopping Trump's efforts to do whatever he wants when it comes to the National Guard, the military, and so on. And he slips here, and it's one of the most odd clips, not only of the week, but I think you'll see in a while. He says something he's not supposed to say, and then he just absolutely freezes.
Organ legal insurrection. Does the administration still plan to abide by that ruling?
Well, the administration filed an appeal this morning with the Ninth Circuit. I would note the administration won an identical case in the Ninth Circuit just a few months ago with respect to the federalizing of the California National Guard. Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen? Hey, Stephen, can you hear me? It seemed, Stephen, I apologize. It seems like we're having a technical.
So Miller is talking. He's doing his normal, this is this is sort of anti-Trump. It's these judges are activists. And then he says, according to Article 10, the president, Donald Trump, has plenary power. And then he stops in his tracks. And if you watch this, some of you are listening, if you watch this clip, he just stops. It's like he knew he messed up and he just stopped. And when CNN re-uploaded this clip, Dan, they did it without the freeze. They totally cut what happened here. Why was this a big deal? Because plenary authority, okay, it means complete and total power. Like if you say somebody has plenary authority, it means they have complete and total power. Now, there's a discussion to be had about the president having power over the U.S. military, but there's supposed to be a share in the military with Congress because Congress is supposed to have to authorize us going to war, right? There still is a separation of powers even with the military in terms of Congress authorizing going to war. But he seems to be saying the president has plenary authority, and that includes over the judicial branch. Like there seems to be this sense of saying he has plenary authority, period, in the government as a whole. And that means that the judges don't matter. The judicial branch doesn't matter. The rulings don't matter. And if you think that I'm being kind of hyperbolic here and I'm reading between the lines, well, let me just see what he said earlier. Let's see. Let me find the, oh, yep, here he said. The judge's decision to block Portland troop deployment was, quote, a legal insurrection, Stephen Miller. The courts that have blocked Trump's actions over the past 9 months, they amount to, quote, an insurrection against the laws and Constitution of the United States. He was not the only one. Matt Walsh, 3.9 million followers on social media, the right-wing provocateur. Quote, Trump needs to openly defy these judges. It is time for a showdown. Elon Musk, used car dealer, said it is high time that corrupt judges who violate the Constitution be fired. Dan, when he said plenary power, to me, he knew that he had said the quiet part out loud, and that's why he froze. I got, as usual, more to say, but what do you think here?
Just to that point that, you know, if one wants to make that argument that plenary power is with sort of within the executive, like Trump is technically speaking, the president is the highest executive officer in the executive branch and so forth. For those who want to say that like that's an unbridled power, you're just like, okay, why bother having two other branches? Like, why is it set up that way? And, you know, whatever. I think this is something we'll circle back around to maybe when we come to Bondi, but, you know, we'd use this phrase saying the quiet part out loud a lot. But ideologies work best when people don't recognize that ideologies are being used against them.
Yeah.
And so you want to be able to deploy them in a way, but use coded language, like call it a democracy or call it, you know, whatever, even though you're being anti-democratic. And this is a theme of the Trump administration repeatedly as they get kind of bolder and more out in the open. As people get more Trumpy, Trump has always said the quiet part out loud. He has never been good at couching language carefully. I think he's incredibly insecure and so forth, which is why he always like comes out and says what he's thinking or feeling or, you know, whatever. But people are in his orbit, I feel like, have become more Trumpy in the way that they talk. And so I think this is actually something I feel like that we see more and more and more as a mix of like feeling like, you know, they won a second election and they, you know, this time it was a popular win and, you know, whatever, and feeling emboldened by that, or just trying to stay in the good graces of a person who becomes more and more mercurial as time goes on. But they routinely say this, and what this does is this is the stuff that comes back and bites them later when they have to argue in like court papers or something that this was a, you know, this was a policy decision, not a political decision or this or that. And people can point at like, well, you said this thing in this interview and here's your title and like, you know, whatever. We see this more and more, I think, where it is just coming out of the shadows that, yeah, what everybody's been saying, all the critics of the Trump administration about, you know, Project 2025 or Project, or, you know, the unified executive theory or these theories of plenary power or whatever. It's like they just come out and say it now, and there's no way to hide that this is, in fact, what they understand and what they believe about the president and the United States.